Okay, so we're going to talk about coming up with a plan or strategy to essentially map out the path of taking a new one rep max. Oftentimes, this is one of the things that we see athletes do incorrectly. They jump all over the place. They go by feel. They don't come into assessing the new one rep max with a little bit of a plan. The good thing about reassessing a one rep max is that you already have a benchmark, and whether it was 4 weeks ago, 8, 12, or even 16 weeks ago, you can pretty confidently say that you're probably going to improve. And so the first step in this is what we want to do is identify a new one rep max. And for us, what we want to do is go ahead and take an immediate victory by adding 5 pounds to your previous one rep max. So in this example, let's say we had a back squat of 385 pounds. What we want to do is work up, and we don't want to do 385 again. We know we can do it, especially after 4 to 12 weeks of strength training. We should be able to go well beyond it. And what we want to identify is an immediate victory. We want to go ahead and get a new one rep max on paper by adding 5 pounds, even if we are potentially able to squat way more than that. What we don't want to do is revisit an old one rep max, jump 20 to 30 pounds, and then fail. Not only have we wasted physical energy, but we've also have now wasted mental energy. So one, we're going to pick a number, 5 pounds over your previous one rep max. From there, we're going to reverse engineer our loading. So we're going to work backwards and come up with a plan that's going to allow us to not only physically prepare for the load, but also mentally prepare. So the goal when we build up to a one rep max is to adequately warm up and then also not incur too much fatigue. We don't want to go into these heavy singles after doing 15 to 20 different rounds of warm up, and now we're going in there fatigued. Okay, so we're going to reverse engineer our loading. So we've identified in this example, we're going to go for 390 first, because our previous one rep max was 385. So identify that number, and basically I'm just going to work backwards and kind of map out my plan as I move through these singles after our specific warm-up. In this case right here, you see that I've gone 375, which is 10 pounds under my previous one rep max. It's going to be a 15-pound jump from this lift to establishing our one rep max, our new one. Now we're going to continue backwards, and as you go backwards, earlier rounds, the jumps can be a little bit bigger. So we see a 15-pound jump here, and we go from 375 to 355. It's going to be a 20-pound jump. Our next jump to 325 is going to be a 30-pound jump. And usually for a strong lift, 30 pounds is about the right number to be jumping from single to single to single. Okay, we never want to jump more than 50 pounds. And the only time I would say that's even appropriate is doing something like 135 to 185, and let's say you're a 350 to 400 pound back squatter. That's pretty much the only time we would make a jump like that, simply because it's just a plate increment. We're just tossing on plates. Another example would be 225 to 275. That's assuming you're a 400 pound plus deadlifter. So we don't want to make extremely large jumps. Stay conservative. Probably 20 to 40 pounds is going to be where most of our jumps are. The further back we come, the larger those jumps can go, and the closer we get to that new one rep max, the smaller the jumps are going to be. Okay. In between these rounds, our rest is going to increase as we go forward. So if we're in the earlier rounds, 135 to 185 to 225, maybe 225 to 275, right? We can move through that fairly quickly. But once we start getting to these heavier loads, as we're approaching a one rep max, your rest window needs to be where it allows you to recover fully. All right, so take as much rest as you need. It could be 90 seconds, it could be much as 3 or 4 minutes on a heavy single, especially when we start going for new one rep maxes. Once you map out this plan, okay, we now have to execute this plan. Okay, so the first step is to identify it, then we're going to map it, and then we're actually going to do it. So let's say we've actually gone through this process and we've got all the way up to 390 pounds. Okay, you just hit a new one rep max, 5-pound victory. Where do you go from there? Okay, so we like to think of a couple 3 easy rules. If it's easy, add 10s. That's going to be a 20-pound jump. Now it needs to be easy. The bar needs to move fast. You have to have complete confidence that a 20-pound jump is appropriate. If it was challenging, if the bar was a lot slower than you expected, but you know you have more in the tank, we're going to add 5s on each side. That's going to be a 10-pound jump total. And then if it's almost a maximal effort, but you feel like, hey, I'm eager to get one more lift in, and you feel like you might have it, that's when we're going to add 2.5. So you kind of have to go by feel once you actually execute that new one rep max. The bigger the lift, the bigger the jump. For example, on a military press, we probably would not do a 20-pound jump. All right, we'd probably do a smaller jump because simply the lift's just not as strong. A good military press, 150 to 200, while a good squat's going to be like 350 to 400. So it's also going to be lift dependent. I would say this rule right here is appropriate for men bench press and then squats and deadlifts as well as cleans, okay? Now, one thing we don't want to see that we see every single time we 1-rep max our athletes is that they have this number in their head, 385, all right? They end up doing 380 or 385 and it feels good, and they jump 20 or 30 pounds high and they have a miss, okay? Now we're experiencing a psychological issue where now they're kind of intimidated by the barbell, intimidated by the weight because they missed, especially if it's a squat and you had to get spotters to pick you up and off, as well as you just wasted plenty of physical effort. Oftentimes when this happens, we'll have a jump from 385, let's just say they go to 415. They do a 30-pound jump, totally inappropriate, right? They should just go right here. But they do that jump, right? They're not really mentally or physically prepared for it. They miss it. We back them back down to 390 or 395. They get it. Then we do a small jump up to say 405. They get that, and then oftentimes they can even get that initial number that they missed simply because they bridge the gap in smaller increments. So when you 1-rep max, go ahead and come up with a plan, especially if you're reassessing, come up with a plan, following these guidelines, and then once we get to this number where we've established a new 1-rep max plus 5 pounds, that's when we're gonna go into kind of some flexible modeling to move forward.